My start in Bangladesh was in a village with no water, electricity, or gas. We shared one blackboard for the whole school, and we made do with whatever we had at the time. And I think that kind of is engraved in me. I realized how much of a dangerous condition that we were living in. So we used to live in unhygienic cargo containers. I had a very different skin tone. I spoke differently. I probably smelled different. For them, I was an outsider. No matter what happens, I'm gonna get out of here, and I'm gonna make sure that we are not stuck in this kind of situation.
Wow, what a journey. There's so much to unpack here. Hi Tanjulia, welcome to the Go Girl podcast. Honestly, I've been so excited for this episode since I met you, and I'm really excited to share your story with everybody.
Thank you very much for having me. I've always been a big fan of yours as well since we have met, and I think you're also very inspiring. So if anything, this is a privilege. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. I think since I've met you at the conference and heard your story as the keynote speaker, I've been very excited to share it. And when the podcast, the idea popped in my head and I started it, I knew you were going to be one of my guests. And I'm so glad you accepted. So I would love to start the podcast with the main juicy element. So I want to start with your story of how you grew up in Bangladesh and now you're a senior software engineer in EA in Canada. So I would love to give you the time and space to dive into that.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's just start by saying it's been a ride, and it's a ride that I'm very, very proud of. So to summarize for the viewers, I would say my start in Bangladesh was in a village with very remote village with no water, electricity, or gas, and in its own way, it had a very beautiful thing to it. You were very connected to the nature. You're just going around and hanging out with the animals and learning as you go. So we had a very small school in Bangladesh, and the school we didn't have any walls to the school. So our school was basically by a riverside, and we had tree trunks that we would sit on and a bench, and we had one blackboard for the whole school. And so in there, my mom was a teacher, and I was like the teacher's, child. So one of my fond memory is I've always been a very studious kid, but when my mom was a teacher, she was always very strict on the fact that she would not give me any preferential treatment, which I really do appreciate. But it got to the point where she would not give me marks because of my handwriting. She was like, you don't have a great handwriting, we can't give you marks. So I was like, this is not fair. I got the things right. My math is right. Anyways, I think from looking back, what used to happen at the school was we would have one blackboard there was about 30 to 40 students in the whole school because a very small community. We shared one blackboard for the whole school, and we made do with whatever we had at the time. And I think that kind of is engraved in me. You do your best with the things that you're given and make the most out of it. And that's what I was taught from the beginning. And I still continue with this that way. So from then on, we moved to Korea at some point. And it was because my dad had an accident in Korea. So we followed my dad, and in there we used to live in very fun places. And by fun, I was so young at the time. All I really cared about was oh my God, I'm with my parents. I'm seeing them every day. I get to be next to them all the time. But also when I grew up, I realized how much of a dangerous condition that we were living in. So we used to live in unhygienic cargo containers. So do you know about the shipments, the cargo shipments that go to different continents when you import and export things? So my dad's employer at the time just put out a container right outside the factory that he used to work at, and we were just made to sleep there. So we had no access to water at the time, proper water. So we would have it go outside the container and then go to inside the factory to get water. And then unhygienic conditions, obviously, because there was no sanitary situations in there, so we had to go outside for everything. But honestly, we got out of the situation, and I think gradually I realized how much I really loved going to school. So I started going to school there, and initially and it's just the nature of being in a country where at that time immigration was not that prevalent. So when I went to school in Korea, um, my my first year in school, I couldn't speak any language, and I could not obviously like introduce myself or make friends. So I was a target of a major bullying, I would say. But I don't take it in like a very like, oh my God, I can't believe they bullied me. I take it as more like children are very susceptible to the environment, and if you are not exposed to someone who is very much like you, in
Mm-hmm.
fact, I was very much not like them. I had a very different skin tone. I spoke differently. I probably smelled different. I probably had a different hair. I definitely did have a very different hairdo that they did. I dressed differently, right? So for them, I was an outsider. For them, I was like someone that they have never seen. And it's natural for a kid to react that way to something that's so new and so foreign. So as much as I did not like the experience then, I also realized it was my opportunity to show my culture, myself, and represent the immigrant communities. Like I'm gonna be the best version of myself. So these people who are bullying me right now, they might actually understand like I'm just like you and I'm your friend and we can all have a very conducive community together and have the best friendship. And I did. I actually ended up in a few years. I was like one of the class captains, and I was running for the school presidency as well at some point. But it was a lot of good times at the time. And then in Korea, I also realized um, there was a lot of things parallel happening. So at some point, when my dad got out of the hospital, we had to seek medical attention, but obviously our economic conditions were not the greatest. So we went to seek medical help from this organization called Shalom House. It's a
Mm-hmm.
church that used to have an organization, like a nonprofit organization, that helped a lot of the immigrants, the laborers that are coming into the country, that you wouldn't have, say, access to like visa services. So they would help you out with language translations or medical emergencies in this kind of situation that my dad was in. So every Saturday, every second Saturday, actually, we would go to Shalom House, and my dad would try to explain to them like how he was hurting. So he lost two of his fingers, uh, but he couldn't tell them like where it was hurting and what was going on. So I naturally picked up. I think I was 4 or 5 years old at the time. I naturally picked up on the fact that like, oh, my dad needs my help. And as a child, you do develop the language skill very quickly, being in
Mm-hmm.
any kind of environment. So I could speak Bangla, I could speak a little bit of English, I could speak Korean. So I became like the resident translator for them. So it started off with starting to help my dad to like starting to help other people of other nationalities, and I became very fluent in very different, a lot of different languages. But I was also a resident translator for the community in that church, Shalom House, at a very young age. But and I loved the experience. It was because it gave me insight onto how much people put effort into just putting a simple meal on table. You're they're having blood, sweat, and tears put into all of their work just so they could make sure someone of their family back home would have something to eat. Someone of their family would have a better life than they're leading right now. And it was the same for our family as well. So that made me develop a deep, very deep empathy for the entire community of immigrants, of anyone who is of not a majority population in any country. So, and from then on, I used to look at these people who were actually volunteering at the organization. So the medical clinic that was used to run was actually run by student groups from different university, and they're the nurses, they're like nursing students and the medical school students. They would come and offer their services, and there would be like one resident doctor that would also come and help out just to guide the other students as well. So I had so much fun working with them, and I had so much respect. And what I wanted to do in my life when I grew up was I was to look at them like, oh my God, they're magicians. They're just
Mm-hmm.
doing so much good for the community. They're saving my dad's life. They're saving my uncle's life. They're saving this uncle's life and that person's life. And I was like, I don't know what you guys do, but I just want to be like you when I grow up. So what do I do? And they go, it's like, okay, the way to be like us is you go into a university. I'm like, okay, I will do the university. So as a child, I was like 5 at that time probably. I just thought, I was like, I don't know what a university is, but I will do the university. I will do whatever I need to do to get that university, and I will be like you. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna put all my effort into getting that university. But a couple of years later, actually a year later, I realized the Korean government at the time did not recognize children's education if you were a labor's child. So that was me. That was a lot of my friends as well in the community. So that was a big problem. So it felt like to me, someone had taken my dreams and hopes of helping my dad or someone like my dad or my community, and it felt devastating. It honestly felt like devastating, and that it felt like someone took your like entire aspirations and like your life goes
Like
away
the
in a
purpose of
moment,
your life.
the purpose of your life just away. And that was a harsh thing to deal with as a 6-year old. I was like, I don't know what's going on. Like, it's not even like someone took my toys away. It was just like, I don't know what to live for anymore. It's a big thing to ask for, realize as a 6-year old. Anyway, so I started then getting involved a lot more with the Shalom House, and then we started running campaigns on. So I started getting involved with like Shalom House, and then we started running campaigns about the unhygienic conditions and then the ways that immigrants usually live. And by immigrants, I'm not talking about expats or someone of that stature. By immigrants, I mean the laborers that come into different countries, how they live, the conditions they were put in, and then the impact that also they have on their children, like myself at the time. And the fact that we also have aspirations. I was the best student in my school, in my class, and I was given award and scholarships to like, go to different places. But for all of that to be bundled into the fact that just because I don't have what it needs to be considered like a proper immigrant in the country, which I did have a visa at the time. I was proper immigrant, but my education still was not going to be recognized by the government, which means I could not have gone into a proper high school, which means I would never have gone into that university. So that was unacceptable. That was not going to happen for me. And I started working with Shalom House, and we started running a lot of campaigns about educational rights for the children, the migrants' rights in Korea, and we got a lot of national attractions. We had a lot of viewers reaching out, supporting and donating for our cause and things like that. And at the end, we realized like I did really have to come back to Bangladesh because we did not want to overstay my period at the time. I did come back to Bangladesh and I finished my high school in Bangladesh. I did realize that in Bangladesh, as much as I love my motherland, I think it's one of the most beautiful countries you could ever go to. At that time, I did not see myself having achieving my aspirations as much as I could if I were to stay in Bangladesh. And that probably has changed right now, and for the better. And I know that there's a lot of developments in Bangladesh that I'm very proud of right now as well. But what happened is I went back to Bangladesh, and in high school, I really wanted to go to like a really good high school. And in Bangladesh, it does cost quite a bit to go to schools that are really good. And there are schools that are also really good, like that's government funded as well. But I wanted to go to a different type of school that was going to give me more exposure to like English and things like that. So what I started doing was I started teaching students very early on. So in grade 8, I started teaching students way above my grades to help them with their coursework. So that meant when I was in grade 8, I just knew everything in grade 9, 10, 11, 12. Everything that had to do with anything to study. So I was teaching students and paying my tuition at the same time. And when I then graduated high school, I really wanted to go for higher education in another country. And that meant going to either the US, the Canada, all the countries that we usually target, like US, UK, Australia, and things like that. And fortunately, the university that I went to, University of Victoria, one of my best things that had happened to me, they gave me so much scholarship. There was no brainer. Like, okay, this is the way that I'm going to do. I don't know what I'm going to do, obviously, at all. And before I went into the university, I had no idea what I was going to do. And I was such a keener in high school. I was just taking all the courses. I took accounting, I took economics, biology, and math and physics, and what there's anything under the sun. I was like, I'll take it just in case if I need it at some point. So when they started asking me about
dream.
exactly. I was like, I'll just make this university thing happen. Like, we'll see. Like, nobody's gonna take this away from me again. And when they started asking me about, hey, what do you want to do in university? What kind of like major do you want to pursue? And I was like, I don't know. I never had to ask myself about like, oh, what do I want to do at this point? And at that point, like being a doctor still was an option. And but I also realized I really wanted to have a lot of impact that was more global in a very succinct way, and that could be and how that could translate. And I think one of the things that I tell people is the way that I went into a software engineering program. It's not because I was like, oh, I'm going to research and everything. It just became like a very natural progression for when I was in university, and some of the professors that I have talked to um, about how it could translate to my aspirations. And software engineering was one of the things that you could immediately see as like, okay, so I could write a few lines of code in my home and I could probably publish it, and millions of people in the world could actually get impacted and have a better way of living if I do it right way, right? So I chose software engineering not right into the university. After a year of doing an engineering program, I decided I'm going to go into software engineering. And there was a lot of back and forth in between, of course, because I had
Mm-hmm.
so many options. Word of advice for everyone out there, just because you have a lot of options doesn't mean it's the best for you. Choose it wisely, but it's also a good situation to be in, to
Mm-hmm.
have that much options available to you. Anyway, so I chose engineering, software engineering, but mind you, my economic situation still was not the best. So when I came to Canada, I was basically living as much as frugally you could do. Very smart in the ways that I would kind of like organize my expenses, but it really meant cutting corners and edges in any way, shape, or form to just stay afloat here. Scholarships definitely did help, but I one of the best things that University of Victoria offers for engineering is we have co-op programs, so you must do at least 4 co-ops before. If you don't know what a co-op is, it means internships. It's a paid internships, and it's usually organized by the universities. And so what we cannot graduate unless we have 4 terms of co-ops under our belt. So what I would do is I would go for 1 term of schooling and then 1 term of co-op, and then use that co-op money to pay for my education. And then
Mm-hmm.
the cycle continued till the end, and I went from different places. And as much as money was a big important factor to me, and that's just the reality of it, I also was very conscious about the fact that I need to have a variety of experiences under my belt right now to make sure I have the best career set up for me when I go out of the university. So I went from big companies, grandfather companies like IBM. I also worked at like corporates like Microsoft, very very small startups like Lamazoo at the time was like an image processing, like an image, not an image visualization. Let's say it was an ed tech software back then. So it's like a VR and AR tech you would use to kind of dissect animal anatomy. But now it's being used for a lot more other industries as well. I also went to like a very mid-sized company. It's for image processing software, much like Adobe and things like that. So a lot of variety of experiences just for me to kind of understand what I liked, what I didn't like, what I need from a job for me to be a successful, contributing member of the society. So when I graduated, it was I did interview in quite a few places. Fortunately, had a lot of places that I could choose from. And at the time, one of the things that I also reminded myself is as a person and as an engineer who just graduated as well. But it doesn't mean I didn't have any experiences under my belt. One of the best things that I could have done is the co-ops that I have done before. So I did 5 different terms of co-ops, and that did put me over the edge for thankfully from a lot of other candidates as well. That also gave me the opportunity to understand that I have values for the work that I provide, and I have a lot of intellect to provide for you. So that means when I do interview for a company, I am equally interviewing them to see if it's the right fit for me. And I've always done that for different companies. When I interview with them, I have turned down different companies because sure, the pay was great and the perks were great, but the team members that were interviewing me was not the greatest experience. So I needed to be very transparent and very honest with myself about the things that I really wanted in my life, and then the people that I wanted to be surrounded by. And thankfully at that time, Frostbite, where I work right now, gave me the best opportunity, and the people that I was interviewing was one of the best people that I have interviewed with. And I would give a shout out to the director of engineering at the time, John. He's been one of my biggest allies in the company as well. He's a biggest mentor. And I would say one of the reasons that I'm at EA is because of how much he made me feel like I belong in the company, and the fact that this is a place that I would excel at. So I think like anyone out there, if you are interviewing and if you're fresh out of university, remember that you are valued, your skills are valued, and you need to be making very conscious decisions. And also remember the fact that if you don't like a certain things in the university, that might also play into effect into like if you like the job or not. So be very mindful of those, but also mindful of the fact that the people that you work with will have more impact on how profound effect on how much you're gonna like or not like, or excel or not excel at your job. So be very careful and be very, very reflective on those things, I would say. But yeah, so I'm at EA, and then I've been here for it's been 5 years. It's been a long journey, of course, especially in this tech industry, of course. But I would say I've had a lot of fun so far. And yeah, I did go from a lot of different roles. It's not just IC. I have gotten into management very early. I was one of the youngest engineering managers in the company. And then from that too, I went into an architecture group that was mainly with like very senior engineers who are like 20, 30 years ahead of me in terms of career. And I'm like, wow, this is a great jam to be in. Learned a ton from them. And I'm now back to IC doing a lot of more IC work. And but I think one of the best things that I have learned from this opportunity is career progression is never linear. It is okay to do horizontal moves, figure out what you like, what you don't like. It's the same way. Just as you go along, just figure it out, and it's going to work out the best for you.
Wow. What a journey. There's so much to unpack here. So thank you so much for like sharing all of it. I'm gonna like track back a lot and ask you a lot of questions
Okay.
about your whole journey. But before I do that, such an inspiration. And before we dive into like aspects of your journey, I just want to ask, was this really resilience innate to you, or was it something that you learned along the way, or was it like there was no other option, so like this is how you had to approach things? Because I can see someone's life going very differently from the circumstances you came from. Like someone could just complain, crib, and not like make use of whatever they have as well, which is also understandable. But like, where is this resilience coming from?
Yeah, I think that's a very good question, actually. And it's not just this situation, I would say. Like, I think it goes to any hardships or any great things that happen in your life. I think you can take it in two different ways. You can either be like, this is great opportunity for me, I'll just make use of it and make sure I have the best outcome. Or the other way is like, I have it, I'm gonna stop. Or if it's a good thing, it's like, I have it, I'm gonna stop. Or if it's a bad one, it's like, it's just bad things happening to me. I have no control over my life. And it's easy to feel like you have no control over your life that you're the driver of. And I think to answer your question about like, was it innate or was it like learned? I would say it's a bit of both, I would say, and but it's mostly learned, to be honest. I think it was very much from the early stages of my life when I have seen my dad, for example, being so resilient. Like he lost two of his fingers and he still started to work for his families.
Mm-hmm.
So like seeing that, and then my mom, like working, she also had a lot of like bad accidents happen to her hand, still providing. So I think like being with parents who are immigrants and working and things like that gives you an idea of like, oh my God, they're doing so much to provide a better life for themselves and for me. What can I do? So when you are growing up with folks like that, you always learn about like the things like, oh, this is what resilience means and this is how you react to certain things. But that also means it could have been the other way. Like could have seen like, this is a hard life that we are given. Like I don't
Mm-hmm.
like living in this container. What is this? Or I could have been like, I don't know why this is like, they're having so much, trouble with their health. I don't have money. I don't have money to go to school. Like, what do I do in this situation? I think it's a mental shift that you have to do. And I think at certain point, it becomes like a flight or fight response as well. So at that time, I was like, I'm going to fight my way through. no matter what happens, I'm going to get out of here, and I'm going to make sure that we are not stuck in this kind of situation. So I think that's how you learn it. But at the same time, but if you ask me, like, how did you get out of the situation? It's a mindset. But I think the mindset definitely starts from very early on. But it doesn't mean that you cannot unlearn it. It doesn't mean that you cannot learn it right now. So for example, I've seen a lot of people who did very well in the early stages of their life because they're very resilient, they're going through a lot of things, but they reach a certain point in their career or in their lives in certain age where they're burnt out. And now they're like, I just lost all the motivation that I had, and now I just don't know what to do anymore. Now you're stuck. Now you don't know what to do the next step. And sometimes it also becomes daunting because you've been in the flight and fight response so long that whatever little things now that happen to you becomes like a big thing. So I think it's also about like reminding yourself when you move forward. It's like, little things do not mean it's a life or death kind of situation. Maybe back in the day for me, like little things were probably like a life and that kind of situation. Like little things probably were like, oh, I'm probably gonna get sick if I don't bundle up with my mom and dad because we're in a container. Or right now I constantly sometimes have to like remind myself of the fact that, like, you're not in that kind of situation. You don't have to be in a flight or fight kind of situation. It's okay to relax. It's okay to take one step at a time, and then you'll just figure it out. Because so far, I think the one that most important thing to realize, no matter where you are in your life, you have gotten yourself in that situation. You have gotten yourself that far. So you did not come that far to only come that far. Like I have said in my previous presentation as well. Like, I think so, keep fighting, keep going forward, but also make sure of the fact that you do not have to always be like pushing all the time. Just make sure that you're also taking care of yourself. Remind yourself that the situation that you were in before, it's not the same as before. It's always changing. And the way to move forward and finding that resilience is figuring out what you need to do in that moment to give yourself that grace, give yourself that little bit of spark. And if it is that, like, you have to be in that fight or flight response to give yourself that spark, that's fine. You probably do need that. But if you find yourself that, like, oh, I probably am not reacting right, and the way for me to get my resilience and my motivation back is to relax, take a step back, and do that.
Yeah, I love how you said that the situation has changed. You're not in that same zone as before, because sometimes like we take setbacks as we don't see progress if it's not like completely visible.
Yeah.
Something failed in Go Girl recently, and I was like, oh my God, we're not making an impact anymore. And I went into that spiral, and I had to remind myself, wait, we have been making an impact. We impacted these many kids, and if this program failed or didn't happen or lost funding, it's fine. We'll find more funding, we'll do it again. But you got to remind yourself from, spiraling and remembering that you have come that far. And if you're facing problems which are different than before, even those problems are amazing because you were facing much different problems before. And if you're like struggling between, for example, choosing a job or something, well, you were not in that stage before you completed your university. That's something to be proud of. And now if you're struggling to choose a job or something, that's still a different kind of problem, and a problem that, you have made progress to reach. So that's amazing. You have truly inspired me since that Can Click presentation. I have been talking about you with everyone. You have truly inspired me, and I would love to dive more into your university journey because you have some
Sure.
big names on your resume, right? Like Microsoft, IBM, as well as startups. So for university students out there, what did you do to ensure that you get all of these internships, especially like your first internship? How did you make your resume strong enough? By the time I think you reached EA, you already had a strong resume because you had so many co-ops, like you mentioned, right? But what about getting those co-ops? How did you go about that?
Excellent question. Honestly, I do so much talks about this and to a lot of these university students till this day. And this is one of the things that you have to remember when you're first starting out. Your first job is not asking you to prove that you can code or do certain things. Your first job is basically asking you, can you be a team player? Can you work in a company or in an environment that you need to be collaborating with other people, right? It's mostly about that. So you also need to remember the way to set yourself apart, find your strengths very much to the point, like your first thing in the resume that you should be highlighting is the strengths that you have. So remember, when I came into the university, I did not have any coding experiences. I did not know anything about coding at all. Like my first thing that I learned in university was probably write how to write hello code, like a hello world, right?
Hello world.
Hello world. And
Yeah.
I kid you not, I was late to my first class in the university, and it was raining in Victoria, and that was the first time in in Canada. So I was trying to like just go around the campus, had no idea where I was going, was late to the class, and I think the professor was talking about functions at the time, and so I missed the part about what a function is. And then for the rest of the semester, for a while, I had no idea what he was talking about, because I was like, I don't know what a function is, and he kept talking about functions and variables, and I have no idea what that means. Um, but it's okay. But I think going back to the resume part, the way to structure your resume is find your strengths. So you would know some of the things that you're great at. So one of the things that I knew that I was good at was I was really good at communication. I was really good at like team leadership kind of things. And I really knew that I was really good at certain technical things as well. So the first time you're gonna apply to university, you'll probably have one or two courses that's gonna be under your belt. Make sure you're also highlighting that. One of the things that I would also say is the first internship is the hardest to get. It is the hardest to get. So the way to kind of like prepare yourself mentally is that you are going to apply to as many places as possible, and you are going to make yourself be okay with a no. I have gotten so many no's before I got one yes. I've gotten numerous no's before my yeses started trickling in. So if I had stopped after the first no, I would not have gotten any co-ops at all. So the way to do is highlight your accomplishments that you have done. Some of the things that if you have done something very impressive in high school, maybe don't mention the fact that like it's just from high school. Like say that like you did an organizational thing. Say like if you was like some team leader in some cases, you can definitely mention that if it was your first year at university, and the employers would understand that. Another way to do is, I think this is one of the more important ways, like do side projects for sure. So amp up your GitHub, you do your side projects. There will be a lot of clubs in the university that you can get involved in. Do get involved in that. There will be so much that you will learn outside the classrooms in those clubs. Like there will be engineering classes, there will be like coding classes, not classes, like at the clubs. You'll have a lot of fun being around people who are in the same mindset as you. You're gonna learn a ton, and you can also use those in your university like resumes. So the first year I actually joined like an embedded systems club, and I made like a little Arduino thing, and it had like a demo of like this little song I really used to like at the fire. I think it was I the Tiger, and it was like it was playing the whole thing, and I uploaded on YouTube, and I uploaded that. Uploaded the not uploaded like included the link to that in my resume as well. So a lot of people, I know that the people are actually going to see and check out my demo, and then I also uploaded the code on GitHub, so they actually knew that I wrote the code and I checked out and it gave the demo as well. So I was a little bit creative in the way that I was approaching. Mind you, it's not something that is groundbreaking that I had to do for my first co-op, of course, but it did set me apart because I was very strategic in the fact that I was highlighting the fact that I was good at communication. I was highlighting the fact that I was a team lead. I was highlighting the fact that I had done a bunch of things in university, and I was a TA back when I was in high school as well for my physics teacher. So those kind of things do make a lot of difference. And as an employer, what we look for in the first, like when we look for in a resume, and if I know that this is a first year student, I'm not going to ask you to kind of solve the world's problem. Right. I'm going to ask you to do simpler tasks, so I know that I can trust you, and so the next time you come back or go to another company, they can be sure of the fact that like you, first of all, you know how to work in an office, in an environment, or in a startup, or in a company. Second of all, they can trust you with the fact that you'll show up and you'll try to work with other people. So don't be afraid. It shouldn't be daunting, but it's a lot of things that's unknown, and that can be daunting. I will tell you that. The first time I've done it, it was daunting for me, and I know that it's daunting for you, whoever is out there right now. But know the fact that just keep applying. Do not give up. something will turn around. And if it doesn't do it right now, it's gonna come later on as well. So do not give up. Do not be disheartened with the no's that are flooding in, because I assure you it's going to turn into a yes somehow.
Yeah, I think something that you mentioned, which is something that I say a lot as well, is that put all your university projects on GitHub, not in third year, in first year, even
For
if
sure.
it's as simple as Hello World, put it up there. Like
Yeah,
maybe not that exactly, but if it's like two more lines than Hello World, it deserves to be on your GitHub. And my GitHub started out like that, and it's also about cultivating a habit of putting everything on your GitHub. Because when you start with the smaller stuff, then you put like the bigger projects you have in third and fourth year on your GitHub as well, which is very
mm,
important because employers do go look at your GitHub. A lot of
they
my
do.
employers as well have like checked my GitHub, checked all my demos and everything. So it really helps. And if you can like launch it, that's the best. If you have a live website, that would impress them
Yeah,
as well.
100%.
Like for
Yeah.
example, your demo, right? And in terms of like the first internship, funny thing, like one of the Go Girl students actually got her first internship in digital marketing, and after it was
Oh,
very amazing because it's been 5 years since like I've been running this organization, and finally we had like a result where a girl got like a paid internship and she
love it.
doubled her family income just by interning for a digital marketing agency, right? So she comes up to me and she's like, I wanted to quit. I do not understand anything. And she starts to like relate it to the fact that, okay, I come from this background. I don't have as much knowledge as you guys. I'm like, girl, like all of us, like even my first internship, I did not know anything. And you're
Yeah.
meant to learn during your internship. So it's important we remember that. That during internships we don't need to meet 100% of the requirements. 30
Oh,
40% is enough to just need to go there with an open mind, and the employer also knows that you're there to learn.
okay.
And yeah, yeah, go
I'm
ahead.
going to say something. So, as an employer who hires a lot for our companies as well, the the job requirement that we put out is a wish list. It's a wish list. Great if you have it, but if you have a few of them, please apply. Even if you
Hmm.
don't have it, if you're a female, you're probably like gonna apply only if you have like the whole thing. Please do
Yes.
not do that. Just apply. You are way more qualified than you think.
That makes me so sad, that I read a stat that females only apply if they meet like 100% of the requirements or very close to the requirements, where a
Hmm.
guy would apply when they meet like 40%. And that's
Yeah.
just so sad because I feel like we just want to be perfect all the time and like meet all the boxes. So since we're like on this topic, I would love to know your experiences as a woman in the gaming industry, which is traditionally sort of male dominated. Has it been any different, or was just like you were surrounded by good mentors? How was it for you?
I would say I'm going to be very transparent here. I think every industry has its own quirk,
Mm-hmm.
for sure. But in the gaming industry, for sure, I'm not gonna say that it's like a very heavily female driven. It's definitely very male driven. I think I have been very used to the fact that I'm surrounded by a lot of male population because of just the nature of engineering that I have done. Um, Having said that, I think for me, one of the main thing that I've noticed is like the difference in the communication style when a new female is coming into the office or on a team. Unfortunately or fortunately, who knows, into for all of the companies that I have worked at, I
Mm-hmm.
was the only female in the team. And I can
Okay.
assure you there's a lot of people that still go through the same experience of, oh, I was the only female engineer in the team. And
Mm-hmm.
it was this experience that I had to at first I was like, oh, this is kind of strange. The first time I experienced it, and then I was like, oh, this is kind of maybe the norm. And then now that I'm a lot more grown up, and now that I know my role in the company and the role in the industry as well, and being such an advocate for having equity and equality and equal gender representations in our job sectors, I do feel like as a company, as a in the industry, not just tech, just gaming in general, I think we have a long way to go still. I think it is
Mm-hmm.
getting better, but it is very far from done, very far from being perfect. And the the ways that we kind of like try to go about it right now, I am actively advocating for hiring for results, of course. Like the main thing is the way that we interview usually is we hire the best candidate that has the skills. However, if
Mm-hmm.
it is a female that I would love to have a see a female doing very well in the interview, and I'm going to be rooting for them. I'm not going to give them preferential treatment, but internally, I am rooting for them. Like, I want you to do well. I want you to do well to the point that I'm going to hire you, and I'm going to be so proud of the fact that you're doing so well. And I want to see that for more people and more people happening. And the unfortunate fact is not a lot of people apply. Not a lot of females apply to the gaming industry just because of the fact that there's a preconceived notion of the fact that this is just like a guys club. This is like a boys club, and you don't have your place. But that is not true. The way that we are trying to service the industry is we want to have as many players enjoy our games and have passion for the games and things like that. And not just the game, and I think just about how we represent ourselves in the game. So even if you don't play games, you will probably know someone who plays games around you. So having someone like you, like when I say you, like me, a female representation in a game, for me is very important, because I want to see if you are trying to represent, if you are trying to service the whole world, you need to have a workforce that also resembles somehow of the whole world. That also means that's half of your population if you're not hiring females, if you are not pushing to have more females in the industry. And that goes for tech, that goes for movies and audios, that goes for gaming industry, that goes for any kind of like anything technical these days. And I'm not going to say that we figured out how to kind of navigate all of this, but this is like a continuous process, like different people are trying to work on. And I do think it's a pipeline issue, and not the fact that it's not enough people are coming from the university. I think it goes way back, deep rooted into pre-university times and before high school. So for example, I think what happens usually is till the preteens, female and male have usually the same kind of interest. They have the same kind of motivations and things like that. And then somewhere in the teenage years, they kind of divide into like, okay, I like technology, or I don't like technology, or this is boys thing to do and this is girls thing to do. There's a lot of differentiation that starts to happen during those time. And I think that's very pivotal for us, that we kind of come into those pivotal moments and make them understand engineering or coding or being in tech or STEM is a viable option for a female, because this is an industry that you can be super collaborative in. Everything that you do is going to be more collaborative than anything that you have ever imagined. You're going to have so much impact with your work. You're going to leave so much mark around everywhere that you do. And the fact that I think one of the things that female populations that I have heard my friends saying is, "Oh, I did not know that I could be good at, technical things." Let me assure you, females in general, we have a very analytical mind, and that is a huge bonus point for being in tech, because there's a lot of things that goes into thinking through a lot of different problems in a very detailed way, and we do it the best. I assure you, we do it the best. So I want to tell everyone out there, like, if you're thinking about the fact that, oh, I might not be good at this, or I'm just not sure if it is for me, give it a try. What's the worst that can happen? The worst that can happen is you go from something out of the tech industry with some skills in tech that's going to also get you so far in other industry as well.
Yeah, I think tech is so prevalent right now. It's needed in every industry, and I think it will set you apart because you can literally start automating stuff, especially with the AI things that is happening. And I would love to hear your take on how AI is being incorporated in the gaming industry, and what do you think the future of AI is? Is our job safe? Are they going to need software engineers?
Yes, absolutely. I would say, like, do not worry about, like, taking your job or things like this. So there will be automations. I'm not going to tell you about, like, every job is going to be secure and things like that. But let's think about how, say, industrial revolutions happened, right? Like, people were at the time also in very frenzy about, like, oh my God, my job is going to be taken, this and that. And what happened out of that is, like, sure, for a momentary amount of time, some of the manual jobs were taken out, replaced by the machines, but that also brought on a lot of different types of industries that actually employed a lot more people than before. So I think it is very normal as a human behavior to perceive something very new as, like, this is dangerous, this is going to take our jobs away. I think the ethical things and then the risk things, those are different, but in terms of job security, if you're talking about it, I think it is just going to make us a lot more efficient in the way that we do work. we just have to think about how you're going to use the tools that are at your disposal and how you're going to make things happen. And in the gaming industry right now, as a programmer, as an engineer, I do extensively use AI for certain things, and
Mm-hmm.
I can obviously tell like everything that we do here, but in the gaming industry, there's a lot of things that we're considering using, like especially like generative AI for a lot of our game creations as well. And I think some of the demos that I have seen, wonderful. I think it's mind blowing, and the the time save that we have is incredible. So that also means that with the time that we have, we can use that time to invest in some other things
Mm-hmm.
that we cannot do with AI, for example. Like we can like invest a lot more with accessibility, we can invest a lot more with quality and things like that. So it's what AI is doing right now is cutting down the time for the things that we can actually cut down on, and then instead enables us to focus and deliver the things in a way that we really wanted from before.
Yeah, I think I do not know how I coded before ChatGPT, honestly, because all the template stuff, all this, I like to call myself a ChatGPT reviewer now. I'm not a coder
Love it.
anymore because I make ChatGPT write my code and then I fix it. Even though it might take a whole day to solve the bug that it created because it's writing in a language that doesn't exist anymore, but it's okay because it's definitely saving a lot of time. And I
For sure.
love your industrial revolution parallel because it is automating the manual jobs, but the creative thinking, the system design, like the bigger picture things, I think still would need programmers. So it's amazing to know that our jobs are secure, so we have nothing to worry about.
You don't have
Um,
anything to worry about.
yeah, this has been an amazing podcast episode. We have touched upon a lot of topics. And just before we end, and I think there's just so much more to talk about with you. We'll have to get you on here again. But
Sure.
just before we end, what is like the last few things that you would like to mention, the advice you would like to give to people who are wanting to come in technology, come into the gaming industry, and like are starting technology?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things is like do not be afraid. Do not, I would say make your own decisions and do not be consumed by the preconceived notions of what other people had said to you before. I think if I had gone down that route, I would not have been in this industry. Gaming industry is very fun. It's a very dynamic environment. We do a lot of cool things. We do a lot of fun things in the company, but we also work super hard to make the things that people love. Um, I think with the gaming industry, one of the things that I would say is if you think about the gaming industry, I do think we are in the forefront of technological advancements because think about our audiences. Our audiences require us to give them the most realistic, more immersive experiences, right? So people play games to connect, to escape reality, to have fun, to do a lot of things in different ways, right? So in order for us to cater to that, we not only have to give them just the games, we have to give them the best graphics, best animation, best motion, and best audio, right? And we also have to make sure of the fact that we are being very accessible to everyone that we are trying to account for, right? So in order for us to do that, we do ask a lot from the graphics industry. We do ask a lot from the animation industry. We do ask a lot from um, this high tech industries. So I think at the end of the day, I do feel like we are one of the people who are pushing the boundaries of tech in many different ways, and it's very interesting and very exhilarating to be in this space. So if you do care about tech, if you do care about the fact that you might be in the forefront of all of this, do come check it out, check out this industry. And another thing that I would say is gaming industry, it's not just the gamers, it's not just gameplay engineers that's making the game. I used to play games, but I don't do as much anymore. But at the same time, I do design and make game engines that enables and powers a lot of EA games, and there are a lot of jobs in the gaming industry that is just not just this part that we have people who are doing web services, people who are doing actually servers, and people who are doing like physics and things like that. It's not just one job function, a game engineer that's making the game. It is a whole ton of people that are here. We have ops people. Anything that you can think about from other industry, you can bring it back to the gaming industry and vice versa. It's very much like that. And same goes for tech. I would invite anyone and everyone out there to check out and consider tech as an option for your career because I think it's one of the best things that you can do. If you are not actively writing code, that's totally fine. Just having the knowledge of tech especially with emerging technologies and especially with the boom of AI, it's going to take you so much further in another industry as well. So I invite everyone to be here.
Amazing. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast, and I'm so excited to share this episode with everybody.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for having me. And like I said, I'm very proud of you and Go Girl for everything that you are doing and biggest fan. So yeah, I'm happy to be here. Thank you so much for everything.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Go Girl podcast. For more such inspiring conversations, do not forget to subscribe. You can also follow me on Instagram at Japnit Ahuja. Until next time, keep being unstoppable. You go, girl.